We discuss the massive updates surrounding Marc Guehi. Is there the potential to sign him for a bargain price in January? And to move on, we talk all things key points from Maresca's press conference and my predicted lineup for our game tomorrow. So I hope you guys enjoy the content today. Later on, I will be releasing 5 strikers I feel we should be looking at in the January window. So yeah, lots of content on BlueLionsTV. I have you guys covered this month. Hope you enjoy, and let's get straight into things. We get straight into discussing Maresca's press conference for our game tomorrow against Morecambe. I guess the question on all our minds is, are we set to see Aaron Anselmino getting some minutes against Morecambe? Here's what Maresca had to say, and as he says, he reveals it's too early to expect Anselmino to play at all. The plan is to try and condition him to get minutes in the future, but for not now, obviously. And I guess it makes sense. I guess it's pretty responsible. We know that he had some injury issues during his time at Boca Juniors. So now that he's only been in the UK for around 10 days, Maresca reveals new conditions, new weather, new environment. You don't want to risk him breaking down at all right now when this is a key time for his learning, his education at the club with Maresca, and of course just the settling in period in London as well. So I guess this makes sense, even though as a fan, obviously I want to see him play, I want to see what he can do, but at the same time I'll be patient for him. Now, as we know, reports did reveal that we are going to assess him during this period, so I feel could we potentially see Anselmino getting a loan move before the window ends? Now, we do have some international spots free now. Ideally, I'm giving that to David Washington, or even more ideally, I'm saying Ugo Chukwu, who the club revealed today could be a Tchouameni level talent. You go on loan to Strasbourg, allowing Andre Santos to come back to us. That's the type of 40 chess move that I'm playing, but obviously it's easier said than done, boys. So that's Anselmino news out the way, and this still means that we stay on topic discussing defenders. Now we discuss Wesley Fofana, as Maresca reveals that the medical team have told him he's around 12 to 16 weeks away from making a full recovery, but Fofana believes that he'll be back a lot sooner. And Maresca said, listen, if Fofana's ready for tomorrow, then, you know, he could play, but he can only go off what the medical team are telling him. And to be fair, if I'm Wesley, I feel your frustration. You know, you want to play all the time. Having your season disrupted like this is very annoying, but equally, when you've been out for such a long time, I feel like this is the crucial period where your body is more prone and likely to break down again, right? So think about the long game. Get ready for the end of the season and get ready for the Club World Cup. That's going to be a great pre-season for you, Wesley. Don't risk forcing yourself back too soon and breaking down in a very silly manner. But another thing I think I'd like to see from Wesley too is maybe a bit more control in terms of how he tackles, because I don't know what it is about Wesley. Maybe it's this trauma I'm still carrying from when Kurt Zouma picked up that infamous ACL injury all those years back, and I was in the stadium when I saw it happen, and I was like, Zouma, you're attempting something you don't need to do now, and he paid the price. And I do feel like Fofana sometimes defends on a knife edge too much, and maybe he has to think about his tackling technique and just like not feeling the contact against his body all the time. But that's only my opinion for the future. Talks then turn towards our interest in Marc Guehi, with Maresca essentially revealing he is a big fan of Marc, which makes a lot of sense, but he respects that he is still a Crystal Palace player. But he admits that he still likes his defensive options he has at his disposal. I'm sure he does, but let's keep it real. Obviously, if the Marc Guehi deal doesn't go through, you're not going to undermine the defenders that you may have to rely upon until the season ends, right? So let's see what happens. But he also reveals that he does like Chalobah, but he is also at Crystal Palace, and I don't know, man, I just felt like when we allowed Chalobah to leave on loan, I just thought it was such a dumb move, because he was the perfect squad player for the way Maresca plays. There was no foresight there, and if anything, sometimes maybe it's something I can share deeper thoughts on in a completely separate video. But with all these like wheelings and dealings, you know, all the transfers 24/7 every single season, it creates this type of environment where I feel like you're forced into having to make all these financial first moves over football first moves, right? Hence why it probably makes sense to move on Trevor Chalobah for that pure profit, right? But what does it do in terms of helping the manager? That's a different discussion for another day, but obviously you can share your thoughts and opinions on that. And obviously to end things, we discussed Kiernan Dewsbury Hall because I'm only focusing on the key points from the press conference. I felt like Enzo's answer on this was a pretty non-answer, and I don't know why my voice is just kind of evolving to something else right now. But he essentially reveals that, he's injured at the moment, and he rebuffed claims about him pushing him out on loan. And he essentially said that this is a decision between not only himself, but the player and the directors. And it seemed like he was just kind of pushing that more towards the directors and the player more than himself. But listen, there's been moments to use him. He hasn't done that. And I think that also speaks volumes, right? So let's see what happens around Dewsbury Hall. But that is the key talking points from the presser. You know what to do. Leave your thoughts below. And this now takes us forward to discussing the big breaking updates surrounding Marc Guehi. Now this comes courtesy of The Athletic, so you know you're going to get something meaty, something insightful, and something to sink your teeth into, right? But as they reveal, this whole saga is going to be a game of who blinks first, who makes the first move, who reacts. As we know, Fofana should be back around the end of March. Badia is only back next month, right? So, as I've been thinking, do we desperately need to sign a defender right now? And for me, this Guehi thing's always been a case of taking advantage of an opportunity in the market to potentially beat out competition in the summer when his valuation will be right down, thus opening up the market to other clubs being able to afford to make a move for him. I think Guehi's only earning around 50k a week at Crystal Palace. Many clubs could double that bare minimum, right? So let's watch this space. But anyway, to focus back to the reports, it was believed that Crystal Palace was still holding out for their summer valuation of around 65 million, but it don't make sense when Guehi has 18 months left, and then literally 5 months from now he'll have 12 months left and his price will come down even more. But I think what was pretty interesting is that The Athletic tends to have these sources that they must protect their identity, and these sources I think are like key people involved, close to the player or the club are in the deal, right? And this source reveals that actually if we presented a fee of around £40 million, that is enough to make Crystal Palace talk. A lot of us have already kind of foresaw the fact that that's more realistic valuation for Guehi, that Palace would be selling him for a more manageable competitive price. And we can't forget the crucial detail that when we sold him to Palace in the 21 season, we included a 15 to 20% sell-on clause included. Now, Palace didn't pay the compensation fee to buy out that clause. They can hold that. So this leaves two possible options right now. We either sign Guehi on a discounted price, discounting the 15 to 20% sell-on clause, or we essentially forgive the sell-on clause and we see it like we're paying Crystal Palace a tax which allows us to sign their star player in a crucial part of the season, taking them from their hands. But there's more interesting observations, of course. Marc Guehi, at 25 years old, he's pre-peaking, he's reaching that stage of his career, right? So that essentially means that whatever contract that he gets from any new club, it will be a pretty significant contract. And I think to myself, okay, are we going to be able to necessarily afford to pay 120 bags to 150 bags for someone of his quality, knowing the fact that many interested parties will be happy to pay that type of wage package? So going back to the report, it does mean that there's also potential avenues to engineer a transfer in January, and one could involve selling Chalobah to Crystal Palace. But obviously that will have to mean that Chalobah agrees to staying at Palace on a permanent deal. But another problem is the fact that Trevor Chalobah, he actually earns more money than Marc Guehi, and he may be just outside Crystal Palace's wage packet, right? So that will be a lot of hassle for Crystal Palace to find an agreement with Chalobah. And I think to myself, ideally, if you're making a move for someone like this, you don't want to wait until the end of the January window, no? You want to kind of get it done ASAP. Obviously, if we sold Chalobah to Palace this window, then the window's open now for Guehi to sign for us. But there's also a second possibility, and that could involve Chukwuemeka making a move to Crystal Palace. Now, on one hand, could you do a straight player swap? Ideally, we prefer to sell Chukwuemeka on a permanent, not even loaning him out. And this is what I mean, because if it wasn't for this wheeling and dealing in multiple windows, signing so many players that I don't think we had to sign, to be honest with you, would we be forced in situations where a talent like Chukwuemeka isn't even being loaned out, where you can observe how he performs before reintroducing him back into the squad, but instead you're already thinking about cashing in on him so you can use that money to sign other players? I mean, this is something that will have to end soon, because there needs to be focus now. It can't be forever sell one to buy one, because we're not going to get anywhere any faster. So you either hope that Palace, of course, engineered a transfer for Chukwuemeka. We decide maybe in the end, last minute, to actually allow him to leave on loan, which seems unlikely at the moment, or it's a straight player swap, as evaluations are kind of similar for both players. Let's see what happens. But anyway, just to end things, I'm going to release like an analysis video on Guehi, which I have ready. I have to find the right day to upload it, you guys. But I do think Marc is a good addition for the squad, because I think he has short-term, medium-term and long-term quality for us. In the short term, we have someone who's a leader, who's a captain. I like Marc Guehi because he's a thinking man's defender. He thinks about his positionings. He thinks about his next action. He preempts things. That's why he ranks very high for things like blocks and interceptions, great at blocking passing lanes, but he's also very composed on the ball. He offers something in the final third with his crosses as well. And he's also quite strong aerially. I don't know why people believe he isn't, but he does rank quite high, because it's about technique more than just having the physical prowess, but you're either too tall or your leap is that high. So I do think that he would benefit us in the short term for now. In the medium term, of course, when you have Wesley, Colwell and Guehi, that's also great strong options to have. And in the long term, you can see if Anselmino and Achimpong, of course, can be those first team guys to replace him. And Guehi could be demoted to being like quality backup or squad positions. So I think it's okay considering the price and everything too. Let's see what happens. But putting this back to you guys, how do you feel about this news? Do you like Marc Guehi? Do you want to see this happen? Or do you think, what are we doing? We're not that desperate to sign a defender. Wait for the summer and let's use what we have. And my friends, this now means that we end things with the predicted lineup, and as you can see on screen, Marc Guehi up front. In behind, Joao Felix and Nkunku and Tyreek George. In midfield, I've gone for Lavia, and in defense, Renato Vega, Tosin, Achimpong, Reece James and Jorgensen as well. Now, Marc Guehi for me, he's a dead cert to start tomorrow, and I'm hoping that big things can come his way second half of the season. Obviously, he's only just about got these handful of Prem minutes, but because they're so sporadic and irregular, guys his age, you need to feel yourself in the league. You can't have unrealistic expectations that Marc Guehi can be doing John Duran stuff and instantly being that backup number 2 that showcases immediate quality. He showcases potential, but I do feel like this must build towards Guehi now getting more consistent minutes off the bench. Let's see what happens. There's possibilities that he could be loaned out, but it depends if we sign a striker this month. If we do that, imagine Marc Guehi is getting loaned out straight away. So to help his cause, I think, of course, getting a brace tomorrow is going to be very helpful, and hopefully he's going to showcase his talents more in the second half of this season. Behind him, of course, Joao Felix and Nkunku, guys who have not really been used much whatsoever. Obviously, the games they're playing against really weak opposition, players of their quality, you're expecting them to have fun and make the game look very easy. It's a shame that that's all they're really offering us at the moment, instead of being like those consistent squad guys that are introducing something new to our game. Can Maresca do something second half of the season? He's gonna have to. He's gonna have to figure out what to do with these guys if there's a possibility that Nkunku remains, and of course Felix ain't going nowhere anytime soon. And obviously, I want to see Tyreek George finally get on the score sheet now. I think he's a good, talented kid. Again, fans of big clubs, we don't have a great perspective when it comes to understanding how development works and why patience is needed, because of course our ambitions are always short term every season. But I feel like we have to kind of clock how this works. Listen, he shows that he's got confidence he can play, but you haven't seen everything that Tyreek George can offer. Only a few months ago, some of you guys were questioning just how good Achimpong was before you saw his superb, full Prem debut against Crystal Palace last week. You haven't seen everything Tyreek can offer this kid has talent. Hopefully he showcases that against Morecambe tomorrow. In midfield, I've gone for Lavia and Chukwuemeka. I feel for Chukwuemeka so much. Some guys saying that he's digressed. You can't have digress when you can just not getting access to minutes. I don't understand that. But I feel like him and Lavia will be a pretty, nice balanced midfield. Lavia gets to condition himself for life back in the Premier League because I really feel he's been a big miss. And I think that he's the type of guy that would see out games and give us that extra protection and composure out from the back that I think Maresca, wants to use and was using before his untimely injury. And Chukwuemeka, I think this kid's still a big talent. There's a reason why we want 40 million for him, even though he's not getting minutes this season. So let's see what happens there. And defense, or Vega, Reece James, who can also condition himself, the Chimpong, and Tosin with Jorgensen in goal. I'm guessing Reece James will invert in midfield. I would like to see Reece James invert. I can't believe we haven't seen Reece James do that, because on paper, this is his perfect role, that Philip Lahm type of role. Reece James, we know, has done bits of midfield before. And you think to yourself, could this be what safeguards his long-term future, where he doesn't have to play box to box and go on these high-intensity sprints forever? I really want to see that base of Lavia and Reece James tomorrow. And that means that Chimpong, of course, plays wide centre-back on the right, Tosin in the middle, Vega on the left-hand side. We turned down a loan move with option to buy from Wolves for Vega today. Let's see if Wolves come back. I'd be surprised by that. But I feel like on paper, there's a good balance here. And if anything, because we're going to easily win this game, I want to be entertained at least. I want to see goals, because for me, these games are just fun and a distraction. Let's keep it real. So my friends, that's a predicted lineup. That is everything you need to know. News today. Make sure you guys catch up on all the big reports over the last 24 hours involving Kvaratskhelia, Liam Delap, and a host more, and you'll find those links below. Hope you guys enjoy. See you later tonight, and look after yourselves. Cool.